Hello, family. Welcome back to the African Diaspora News channel. I am Wongel Zelalem, and today we're talking about how an African country humiliated a European empire. And this conversation is worth having, and today happens to be its 130th anniversary. Ethiopia, as we speak, is celebrating the victory of Adwa. The victory Adwa is there because Italy tried to be conniving and Italy tried to conquer and colonize Ethiopia, but failed miserably, resulting Ethiopians to basically be victorious over Italy, and that's why Ethiopia has never been colonized. So, we shall get into it. In case you're new to the story, I'll be very happy to share this info, especially on the anniversary of the victory of Adwa, which is today. So, as I said, it's Ethiopians celebrate the victory of Adwa on March every year, and this happened. The battle was in 1896 between Italy and Ethiopia. Of course, Ethiopia was victorious, but there's more to it. There's more conversation to be had behind it. Why did Ethiopians win and conquer a European nation? Firstly. Secondly, how were they able to do it? And thirdly, what can we learn from that victory? Because it was an impactful victory. After it happened, a lot of African nations were motivated to demand for freedom, basically, because the scramble of Africa happened after this fact. So Ethiopia was not part of that. Anyways, where do we start? I think we should start from the beginning. The beginning was Italy and Ethiopia were having a conversation. It was in 1893. They were about to sign an agreement that shows the relationship, the partnership. In fact, it was supposed to be an agreement that will help them come together and be stronger partners, right? As if any European nation will be willing to do that, like equal win-win kind of agreement. We still talk about those ridiculous agreements, but let's hold up so you understand where the conflict began. So this article was called the Article of Wuchale, right? And in that agreement, there's 20 articles. 20 articles were in that agreement, and the one it was translated in two languages. One is in Italian, of course, and the other one in Amharic. It's an Ethiopian national language. So they agreed, they were about to sign, and the Ethiopians realized last minute that a specific article, which is the 17th article from the 20, it stated that there's a difference between the Italian version and the Amharic. So in the Amharic version, the Italians on purpose told the Ethiopians that this is a partnership. In fact, they put it like this. They said it is going to promote friendship and trade. And so Ethiopians had this relationship that is written in the agreement. The Ethiopia version says it allowed Ethiopians international diplomacy to be conducted through Italy, but by choice, is what is written in the Amharic version. But in the Italian version, sneaky Italy, they wrote in their own version that when you translate it, it says Italy imposes a protectorate over Ethiopia. Protectorate means Ethiopia rules over Italy rules over Ethiopia. You see the sneakiness, like it never changes. Even now, we're talking about the agreements that they make our leaders sign. Now, at least they don't have. We can't say that our leaders don't know better because you can literally translate it through AI. Like then, it was much harder to find a translator, right? So when the Ethiopian Emperor Minilik II and his wife Etegei Taytu found out that there's a difference between the Ethiopian version, the Amharic version that this agreement is written, and the Italian, which, as I said, it's a big difference. On the seventh article, they snicked that in and said, on the Amharic, they're like, you're free to do whatever. This is just a friendship, a diplomatic agreement. On the Italian version, they said Ethiopia will be under the rule of Italy. So when they found out, they said, nope, we're not signing this. And when they said no to signing the agreement, Italy was like, okay, we're going to colonize you. So that's how the conversation just ended, and it became a war. So Italy sent through their troops. Once Ethiopia, the emperor, and the authorities found out that Italy is trying to invade Ethiopia, they devised a plan. They came together, and this is something I think we can learn right now in 2026, all of us. In Ethiopia at that time, they were not as united. Like, there were tribal differences and issues. There's regional differences. There's religious differences. So even within Ethiopia, even though they had, or we had, an emperor, there were a lot of disagreements and pushes, and they really were not in let's just say they were not united. But once they heard there was an enemy, a common threat coming to colonize them, they came together real quick, which is so admirable. Like, they really didn't, many people did not like each other. Many people were going at each other's throat, right? So you would think they will start selling each other out, because it happened in a lot of regions. They will start letting the enemy in. Nope. They came together uh, against all their differences. They're like, okay, we'll have this conversation, this fight, after this common enemy and threat has been destabilized. So they all came together under the emperor rule. Emperor Menelik II, as I said, and his wife Etegei Taytu. We'll talk about her in a little bit, because she plays a huge role. They come together. They convince everyone to come together, to unite, to defend their country against a common threat, which is Italy coming to colonize them. So they came together, and the war began. The Battle of Adwa began. The reason why it's called the Battle of Adwa is because it's closer to that place called Adwa. So after and the thing is, they played a strategic game. So Italy really underestimated Ethiopians, right? So the generals, when they came through a specific area, of course, they don't know that the terrain, the mountains, but the Ethiopians already know, like, that's their hood. So what they did was they used strategy. There was the ones that first met the Italians were not a lot, so the Italians were like, oh, we can take this ones easily. And the Ethiopians retreated, but that was calculated. They sent word that they lost, so the Italians moved further, meaning they got them where they wanted them, because it was a strategy. They were trying to put them in an area where they can surround them. So the Italians thought, oh, okay, we won, and then they moved. Once they moved, the troops came. And by the way, I don't think Italy knew Ethiopians were heavily armed. They got weapons from Russia. I believe there was some from Britain, even from Italians themselves when they were in a good uh, partnership. They've taken some weapons. So basically, needless to say, Ethiopians were as equipped, if not more. So when they got them where they wanted them in that strategic area, they annihilated them, is the right word to use, because thousands of Italians lost their life then. I have the exact, okay, they say around 6,000 lost their lives, and then about 3,800 were captured and taken captive in Ethiopia. So when that happened and they lost, that's what we call the victory of Adwa in 1896. Ethiopia was victorious. Once Italy found that out, they were like, okay, sorry, we're going to send another agreement. We're going to accept your sovereignty. And that agreement, I believe it's called the Addis Ababa Agreement because it was signed in Addis Ababa. They introduced a new one. So that was how, Ethiopia was able to be victorious. They used strategy, they used unity, they used knowledge that the enemy didn't have, and they used it against the enemy, and they won. And they were not willing to sell out. That's why I said this happened 130 years ago, but it still is something that we can learn from, because from the beginning, like, it's like the games have never changed. It's just the players that change, right? Because shady deals, we still talk about how this European countries, Western countries will bring us shady deals, and our African leaders, instead of looking at it and saying, hold up, we're not going to sign it, they just allow it, they sign it, and then sail away their people. So the one thing that we can learn from this victory is that in the first place, the emperor and the empress were not willing to sell Ethiopians out. As soon as they found out that the Italians are trying to trick them and rule over them and colonize them, they say, no way, over our dead body. And they came together and went out and fought together with the people, right? One, the first thing we'll learn. Secondly, unity. It doesn't matter if you have an issue with your neighbor, it doesn't matter if you're fighting with your sister, your brother. At the end of the day, when there's a common threat, you have to come together. We have to come together in order to win. If these people didn't come together and like they refused to identify as their tribe, as their religion, as their groups of people that they want to associate with, as their different regions, they would have not won this battle. They won because they were able to gather like 100,000. I think it's about 100,000 troops that went out to fight the Italians. So if they didn't come together and unite, we wouldn't have this victory to celebrate. We would have been colonized. That's the second one, that the biggest lesson, like even now, this generation can learn from, right? And thirdly, they used strategy. They didn't just pray to God. Of course, they're very religious, so they went with their relics, and they even took relics and their religious items to the war so that God can help them. So yes, they were religious and they believed in that, but they used strategy as well. As I said, the Italians underestimated them, so they got them where they wanted them. They faked retreat, and then once the Italians started moving forward and trying to capture them, that's when they surrounded them, and then they did what they needed to do. They won the battle. So that is another learning. So in a nutshell, yes, the victory of Adwa didn't stop there, because it created this ripple effect, and other African nations started standing up against their colonizers and saying that Black people somewhere, like in Africa, other Africans won. Like they were able to be victorious. We can be too. So they started challenging the ones that were colonizing them. So of course it played a role during that time, a huge role, but I believe strongly it can play a role right now if we learn what our ancestors did and what they were not willing to do. Okay, so yeah, I think that's the story of. Oh, let me show you. I told you I'll show you the lady, the empress. That's Empress Taytu. I thought I had Emperor Minilik's image, but it turns out I don't have. But you can find it on the thumbnail of this video. When you click on it, you'll see him there. And this is her. This is, how Ethiopians draw our cartoons. It's like that, with big eyes, afro. Like even Jesus looks like that in our Christian, what is it called? Like churches. So you see, that's supposed to be Empress Taytu holding the gun, and that's an Italian giving his hand and retreating. That's how we used to depict them. And there's another one, I think, right here. Yes. So this is, you see, they even went, I told you, they went with relics, and they went with religious items to the war because they believed God will be with them. So that's also depicting how they fought the Italians. So this lady, I said earlier, I'll mention a little bit, like I'll talk about her a little bit. She played a huge role. Her husband listened to her, and she played a huge role in saying no to the agreement, signing the agreement. Also during war, she was out there with the people fighting and also motivating those that were retreating. Of course, you're afraid, like you don't want to go to war, but she played a huge, huge role, and that's a lady, so that's also admirable, respectable, right? A Black woman. So yeah, this is how Africans were able to humiliate a Europe empire, because Italy was so ashamed. After that, they said okay to anything and everything Ethiopia asked for it in the agreement. They were like, okay, okay, you're a sovereign nation. We accept that. And they also didn't want the word to go out there. Like, can you, back in the days, it was the most embarrassing thing that can happen to you, to lose against Africans, Black people. Like, it's just unheard of. So yeah, definitely, it's a beautiful story. I want to say, mm, allow me to speak in Amharic a little bit. እንኳን አደረሳችሁ እንኳን ደስ አላችሁ ለዚህ ቀን ስላበቃን እግዚአብሔር ይመስገን። መልካም አድዋ ለመላው ኢትዮጵያ ሕዝብ. I want to say that. I was just saying, what was I saying? Like, I was just saying, great people of Ethiopia. Happy victory of Adwa Day. Like, that's what I said, basically, in case you're wondering what I'm talking about. So yeah, that is what has happened. Let me get into the chats. Hi, Renz. Renz, greetings to you too. Welcome. Hopefully you enjoyed, learning a little bit, in case you didn't know about this victory against the Italians. Susan, good evening to you too. Welcome, sister. John, thank you, John. Thank you so much for your kind words. I appreciate you. Samuel said hi. Hi to you too, brother. So, if you have anything to say, even wish Ethiopians in your own language, yeah. Gambao said the question is, are we free now? The answer is probably not, but we can still learn from what has happened in the past so that we can do better. Like, that is the reason why I'm excited, because, like, we talk about like, they did this, they did that, all the things that they were able to do, but it's also very important for us to remind ourselves that there was once victory, there was once that like, we've humiliated a whole empire. So it's extremely important to remember why we succeeded then, so that we can do it again. And what did they do differently that we're doing wrong? Like, for example, Gumbo, what are we doing now that they did well but we didn't? I can give you one example, and a big one. We're not united. We're fighting amongst each other. We're going at each other's throat. We're unaliving each other. That's one big one. Look at what they did. Even them, they were not like one. They were not like this unified people. But when they found out that there's a common thread, they came together and tackled it. That's what I'm asking for. That's what I want us to take away from this. Even though we believe that I'm from this tribe, you're from that tribe, that's a different region, that's a southern, this is a western, this is eastern. If we can come together against a common enemy, we can succeed. We can also be victorious in our own right. So yeah, I feel you, I hear you, but that's the reason why we need to talk about this, because they succeeded and we're failing them right now. After all that they've done and they fought, we're here, tearing it apart. Let's do better, is what I have to say about that. Anyways, fam, if you have nothing else to add to this, I thought it was a great opportunity to come and share a little bit about my history as well, because Ethiopia is my home. Also to empower us, to motivate us. It was done once, we can do it again, and let's not fall back for the enemy. Okay. Anywho, love to hear from you. Let us know down below what your thoughts are about this story. I'll see you tomorrow, same time. Stay blessed. Bye.